Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 262 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The Second Amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd Beard. Is the greatest hostess anyone has ever seen. She's amazing. I don't care what anybody else says. Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm friggin' awful, Weer'd. So as you can probably hear, I'm torn up, and I'm not gonna dump my emotional baggage on people, but our family has really been hit with the 1-2 punch. And so about 3 weeks ago, my father died, and then on Friday, we had to put our sweet little dog Daisy down, and I mean, this has just wrecked us. And so I'm going to try not to be weepy through the podcast, and the reason I'm here is because if I can distract myself, it hurts less. So I'm going to try and power through, but if my voice starts doing this, you'll know what's going on. And that's really all I have to say about it. How are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing all right. I had a bit of a day, but it's completely trivial compared to what you were going through. And the same idea is we got a show. We got a good show going on, and I think that's going to be the best. But yeah, my condolences to you for all the losses. I mean, it's just these are big uninvited changes, and my heart goes out to you, and I'm sure I'm speaking also for the entire ACP family. But by all means, ACP people, I know Aaron likes well wishes, so shower her. Yeah. I think we've got a full show, so let's skip with the pleasantries and dive straight into the business. So I will attempt to cheer you up and say we've got some good news here in Massachusetts.
Oh, thank God.
And that is the anti-gun bill HD 4420 is on hold. And so it's good news and not as good news in the fact that what the good news is that this was absolutely exactly what every other anti-gun state was trying to do. Of course, those that know, NYSERPA v. Bruin, it's one of the biggest decisions. I mean, it really is the biggest decision in Second Amendment history as far as the Supreme Court goes. But as a general rule, if you're listening to this podcast, it probably didn't do much for you because over half the country is constitutional carry, and then of that, 70% of the rest are all shall issue. So, which means that, hey, guess what? If you could pass a background check and maybe you need to take a class or two, you got yourself a carry permit. It's only I believe it was 6 states that would mess around with you and might deny you a permit, even though there is no legal reason to do so. And that was the crux of NYSERPA. Of course, New York is one of the ones that does that. And then also, Massachusetts, Hawaii, New Jersey, Maryland, and all of them, with the exception of Massachusetts, immediately went through within the first 6 months or so. New York, it was within I think a week or two. Like the court case was directly talking to them, and they just went, nope, we're not going to. Went through and rehashed their laws so that even if they had to issue permits, they now made carry permits effectively worthless in the fact that a lot of them had heavy carry restrictions. I know in New Jersey, you couldn't even carry a firearm in your own car, meaning that if you stepped out your front door and walked over to your driveway, you could carry a firearm. But as soon as you got into the car, you would have to disarm. And then probably wherever you drove the car to, you would not be able to put the gun on. And so, yeah, and of course, New York was well known to where would concealed carry be illegal? Well, probably a couple of streets in New York City. Good job, guys. But Massachusetts had not. And then a couple weeks ago, they dropped the hammer on us and dropped this bill that essentially would do all those things of the make concealed carry essentially illegal everywhere by forcing an opt-in system and essentially making most public buildings off limits to concealed carry, and then also making most modern firearms completely illegal within the state, and adding.
What did your state level group name it? The Gun Owner Imprisonment Act? Or
Yes,
something like
yeah,
that?
that was more than likely Jim Wallace. He hasn't specifically signed up for him, but I have hung out with Jim on many an occasion, and that sounds like his exceptionally dry wit is the lawful Citizens Imprisonment Act.
Mm.
And so essentially it added a whole bunch of layers. Our Speaker of the House was actually nice enough of saying that this simplifies the gun laws, even though it was 140 pages. Yeah, because most things that are 140 pages long simplify stuff.
Well, I mean, if it boils down to they're all illegal, you can't have them, that does simplify things.
Yes. Good Lord, Aaron, don't turn the tables on me like that. I wasn't expecting it. But either way, it was exceptionally awful. It was going to add hilariously, it was going to add active shooter and threat de-escalation training that even many police officers don't get or for it. And that would also, and except for it's one of those okay, if I'm supposed to be trained in active shooter prevention, but yet you're not allowing me to carry anywhere, when am I going to actually be able to stop an active shooter? Just again, the standard anti-gun prohibitionist statement of, does it make gun ownership harder? Does it bother gun owners? Cool, we'll take it. It doesn't have to make sense, and it certainly doesn't have to make anything safer. Oh, also, it contains zero provisions for prosecuting unlawful gun owners in the commissions of crime. It was just simply making crime out of stuff that was previously legal. So, yeah, that law has been put on hold because Massachusetts gun owners, possibly some outer state people. I know there was definitely talk that there was encouragement by some Second Amendment channels for out of state people to also make their voice heard. And also another big one is several chiefs of police from a whole ton of towns throughout there spoke out against it, because the bottom line is if they were going to be forced to do all sorts of extra stuff to comply with all the people that were trying to get their licenses. And they're like, I don't know how we're going to do this. So it was an absolute disaster. And luckily people spoke out against it. There was a closed door meeting. I was very worried of what that closed door meeting might be. Turned out the closed door meeting was likely, I haven't heard any insider talk on it, but it sounds like the closed door meeting likely was a lot of people saying this, they're going to have my head if we pass this or even vote on it. And so it got.
Well, I was actually hoping it would be the sheriffs would be going, I'm not going to enforce this. Or perhaps I'm going to need way more funding if you want me to enforce this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of prominent gun shop owners that are out there. One was Toby Leary of Cape Gun Works. I think it's called On Target Radio. I'm trying to remember what his podcast is. He's on the local radio, so I hear him every day. So seeking out I haven't sought out his podcast, but he's at Cape Gun Works, also has a YouTube channel that he does a lot of talks on. But he openly saying, look, we complied with Mara Healey's assault weapons ban, edict that just suddenly said, yeah, all that stuff that the law says is legal. Yeah, it's not legal. And they said we complied with it, and look what it got us, nothing. And he openly said, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to keep my business going as if nothing happened if this passes. And I think there's a lot of people that are drawing lines in the sand on that level of just no, screw it. We're just going to do that. And of course, there's also the statement of I heard a lot of people. I have not encountered anybody, but when Mara Healey put through her little edict on assault weapons, essentially declaring anything that was kind of sort of remotely shaped like a gun that might be on our assault weapons ban, no matter how compliant it was with the letter of the law, it was considered a copycat. And that would be something like if it uses an AR-15 magazine release, then it probably is a copycat. So essentially, but a bunch of people, I heard a bunch of people definitely saying, well, if that's going to happen, well, then I'm popping the brazing on my muzzle brake, and I'm drilling out the pins on my stock, because in for a penny, in for a pound. And there's certainly something to be said about that. I've openly said I haven't changed the configuration of any of my guns, but the way they sit, according to Mara Healy, I could be thrown in prison probably for the better part of the rest of my life just from the stuff I've got. And I can't deny it because they're all registered with them. But yeah, so converting them over to full auto, what's the harm? So
as the saying goes, after the first felony, all the rest are free.
That is true. It's sadly true. But either way, it's on hold. That's the good news. And it's not being voted on. The bad news is, and also good news is they're scrapping it. The bad news is that they're likely going to be replacing it with something else, and probably they're going to use the information they gained in this as a way to make something that's a bit more palatable, but still worse, because it's going to be adding more restrictions and probably making it so that those people that they've been denying carry permits for so long now won't be able to carry anywhere. And also people like myself who have been fortunate enough, because I was able to choose where I lived within the state, have been able to carry everywhere. They'll probably heavily restrict now where I can carry a firearm. So yeah, we will see. But essentially, if you're hearing this in the state of Massachusetts or know people in the state of Massachusetts, tell them to keep the ear to the ground. I will be letting you guys know through this podcast and any other means available about any future movement on this gun control bill, because there will be one coming, and the next one will probably not be as horrible. This was literally like the worst gun control bill ever fielded in the United States. But there probably will be another one. So we need to be ever vigilant.
Oh yeah, tyrants keep trying until they're slapped down.
Mm-hmm. The good news is we keep trying. I am very much awaiting the next assault weapons ban case that's going through, because I was somewhat, not very, but somewhat drunk on this podcast a couple years ago when Warman v. Healy was denied by the U.S. Supreme Court. And I knew that was the end of the line for that case, and that for the time being, the Massachusetts assault weapons ban held. But it's not the end, because there are other assault weapons bans in other states, and they also keep revamping them. And so hopefully, I'm hoping that the Supreme Court is going to bundle together there's another one from Massachusetts, and there's one from California. I'm trying to remember if there's one from New York as well, but bundle a bunch of them together and just pool the resources so they can hear it in just one case. So we shall see where that goes. But again, it works for us as well. We can keep trying. And again, we can keep submitting things like the Hearing Protection Act or the National Reciprocity, or heck, we might as well throw in a national constitutional carry bill. That's with over half the states. That's at least got a little bit of a little option for it passing. So we can keep trying as well. So that door swings both ways.
I'll just be over here holding my breath.
Yeah. Well, don't do that, Aaron. You'll need breath. We didn't lose our rights overnight.
That's the joke.
We're not going to get them all back before you turn blue.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to hear back on all the various cases that Blazing Sword Pink Pistols filed AC briefs for. We've got one where we filed against New York's Concealed Carry Improvement Act on First Amendment charges, and haven't heard back. I don't know if we're going to hear anything back this year or not. Just as an update regarding Oregon Measure 114, and I'm drawing a blank as to which level it was at. The lawsuit was struck down, thrown out, whatever the term is, by whatever judge it was, but I'm certain that they're going to appeal it to the higher level, which I think is, I don't know if it's district or circuit, but, it's just, I'm keeping an eye on it, but so far, no good news. But, we haven't exhausted all of our options there.
Very true.
Probably some others, but I can't think of them right now.
Well, let's move into some, I guess we could call it good news. It's good news on the outcome, bad news in the fact that it was that it happened in the first place. But...
Well, yeah, if a bad thing happened and it could have been so much worse. This is about the best case scenario for a terrible outcome, short of just it not happening altogether.
And that is that an armed man attempted to enter into a Jewish school in Memphis, Tennessee. And it sounds like I was just reading the story just before we started recording. And it sounds like the school went on to full lockdown and he was unable to gain access inside the school.
Well, he was able to get in through one door, and they have a picture of him doing it. And I just want to point out that he was either wearing sandals or flip-flops while doing so. Mm-hmm. Not my choice of footwear when contemplating a massacre. But yes, he was unable to gain access to the interior and could not hurt anyone. And so he fired off some shots outside and then left. And then he was pulled over by police a short time later. He got out with a gun in his hand, and he was shot. Unfortunately, he wasn't shot dead, but he is hospitalized, and, none of the first responders were hurt. So, when only the piece of crap is shot, no one of consequence was hurt. And I think that's great. One thing that I do want to point out, Weer'd, you didn't have it in the article you linked, and I linked a CNN article, is that, maybe it was in yours, I don't know, but the shooting suspect was described as Jewish and a former student of the school. So, I don't think you can call it anti-Semitism. I say that with some doubt because, I wondered how a Hispanic man could be considered a white supremacist, and then you mentioned that one guy in Texas had a swastika tattooed on him, and it's like, okay, I don't know anymore.
I will say allegedly had a swastika tattooed on him because so far, obviously at the time that we talked about it, the shooting, I think the shooting was like the day or the day before we sat down to record. But as far as I know, the only photograph that I have seen of this guy's alleged Nazi tattoos were, because he had the SS runes as well, was that one picture that we both linked in the show notes where it is just a picture of his naked torso. His head is cropped off, as is the rest of his body. So I will have to say the strangeness of it being a Hispanic man who is a quote unquote white supremacist, shooting up a mall in Texas. And then later on, of course, we had the Indian man who drove the U-Haul truck into the pylons at the White House, and the giant U-Haul truck was completely empty except for a very, very crisp, brand new Nazi flag. So I take it with a grain of salt is what I am attempting to say.
Weird stuff. But anyway, the point that I'm making here is that it sounds like a disgruntled, it sounds like a oh God, I know what I want to say. Getting the words out is difficult. So you know how, like with Columbine, you've got the students who are really mad either at other students or the teachers and they shoot it up. It sounds like this, only it's time shifted over years because, based on the picture, he's going bald. This man has not been in the school for, I'm going to say 20 years. So I don't really know what set him off. But it sounds like he's got a history here, as opposed to someone who has a deep hatred of Jewish people or is just looking for a soft target.
Yeah, that was not in the other story, and I'm really glad that you dug this one out, because I hadn't heard the Jewish connection or the fact that he was a former student. So again, really crappy story. Like, it sucks that this happened. As the there was a find the quote. Try to find this person's. The regional security director, Amanda Braswell, she said, Monday was a tough day. What we had hoped would never happen happened. That thing only happens to other people, not us. The thing that no community wants to imagine in their backyard, but our community was ready. And that is the key, is she said that it happens to other people, but not us. But they say that, and we like to think that, but we should all keep in the back of the mind that no, things like this happen to people just like you, and that's why we carry guns.
Mm-hmm. And kudos to the Hebrew Academy of Memphis. They very obviously had a very good plan in place, implemented it flawlessly. The goblin wasn't able to get in to hurt anyone. This is not only just good news on the face of it, but hopefully other schools can learn from this and implement it.
Yeah. There's so much to be learned from this. Again, to bring up Uvalde, because, I'll be honest, I want to talk about it because it was such a horrible event and there were so many bad things that happened, and not enough bad things have happened to the people that dropped the ball in that case, which is infuriating. So at least I will bring it up as educational. Obviously, the biggest glaring point is the police there, like the police just about everywhere else, were trained to engage the suspect as soon as possible, because the moment you start engaging the suspect, they stop shooting at people. Also, it allows you to end the confrontation sooner rather than later, and therefore people who were wounded but not killed will not succumb to their wounds as they did in Uvalde. And that is, I've speculated heavily that many of the people in Parkland probably could have been saved by EMS if they had been allowed to get into the school. But since the police were hiding outside like cowards, even when the shooter had left the school, the police still had declared it a hot scene and did not allow EMS in to start triaging the wounded. And so, but in the case of Uvalde, there were definitely people that were texting or calling people outside the classroom and saying that they had been wounded, but clearly they were well enough to still be operating a telephone and still communicating with people. And then later on they passed away, which implies that they likely succumbed to their wounds. But the other factor is that have doors that work and a security plan that works. In Uvalde, the main entrance door was supposed to lock and had been closed when they saw the truck crash out front. They had warning, and they put the school on lockdown. Unfortunately, the door that the killer entered the school in was not locked, and he walked. And
in fact, was propped open. I do recall.
You know what? I've heard conflicting stories on that. I thought it had come down to the fact that it was propped open, but the person closed it before the killer got to the door, but it did not latch or properly latch. And so I'm not really sure. I believe I thought I read in one of the FBI report that it had malfunctioned, but it's been a while. But
point being, it was a door that was supposed to have been kept closed, and it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. And the killer then wandered the school trying doors, and only all the dead were in one classroom, because that was the one door that the killer found that was unlocked and unsecured. So doors are, we talk a lot about armed security, allowing teachers and school staff to go armed, allow parents like myself who routinely visit the school to pick up my child to do that sort of thing. There's always parents coming in off the street to bring home a sick child, drop off a, extra set of clothes, drop off a lunch bag or a book bag or things like that, coming into the classroom to volunteer or speak and all that. And right now, because of the Gun-Free School Act, we are either required to disarm or possibly face local and or federal charges for it. That if you change that would be good. But what's even better is not letting them in at all. I think Massa Youb is very, very famous for saying, what do you do when someone knocks on your door at 3:00 in the morning? It's not, get the shotgun, bunker down, do all that. Just don't answer the door.
Yep. Also, it's probably a good idea in general just to keep your doors locked. I know that most of the little door handle latches will not stop a determined intruder, but the fact that they have to break in is noisy, and the noise and the time it takes for them to break in might make the difference for you to get your home defense firearm and engage them rather than be taken by surprise. I mean, most people who live in cities probably keep their doors locked, but if you're living out in the suburbs or a rural area, a lot of people leave them unlocked. And no, I think we're past that point in society. Keep them locked. You don't have to lock like all the deadbolts, but just do the little door latch.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great point. 2 points is one. Even if you don't have a castle doctrine in your state, it's still an added legal defense if you do have to defend yourself, if they had to forcibly break into your house and then you end up shooting them, is a whole lot better than if they just wandered into your front door. And then another one, if you are living in the suburbs, may I note, whenever I'm traveling across the country, I see these subdivisions pop up all over the place, where it is like, 10, 20, 100 houses that all look very much alike, all on these little postage stamp lawns. And one of the things that I've always thought about is oh man, if you walk up the street to the local watering hole and toss back a couple of beers and start wandering back 4 sheets to the wind, how many doors do you have to try before you get the right one? So the idea that a drunk could just wander into your house is not a good place to be either, because how do you know that person rummaging around in your kitchen, are they a robber or are they a drunk that's so hammered that they think they're home?
Mm-hmm.
I actually know of 2 separate people who were happened to be twisted on some fairly heavy drugs and wandered into a stranger's house. One was just didn't know what else to do, and I think they'd gotten dosed by somebody. I think someone played a prank on him and put like acid or something in a drink. I'm trying to remember what the story was, but they literally wandered into somebody's house and were just asking for help. But they walked into their door, and I'm sure that person was not pleased to see a very, very high, messed up looking kid in their kitchen. Another guy actually was in somebody's house and was making a ham sandwich, and the person told him to leave, and he was super annoyed because he's like, it took me forever to find all your stuff because I didn't know where you kept your bread. Don't do drugs, kids. And if you do, have a chaperone.
Do them responsibly in your own home, well away from firearms, sharp objects, your car keys, all sorts of things like that.
Yes. All right. Well, we got a pile of segments. And so this first one, we just talked about gun control laws. This is nothing new. And so Xander is going to talk about gun control laws in the Old West with, I got to mention the title. The title's brilliant. Gun control, not okay.
Parentheses, Corral, in parentheses.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. I've been listening a bit to the history around the American Wild West of late, and found that there's a few places that did indeed try the ultimate dream of anti-gun folks. That is to say, a few towns flat out banned guns outside the hands of the police. Many of our listeners will first think of the shootout between Wyatt Earp and his deputies, or rather, Wyatt Earp and his friends and family, and the McLaurys and Clantons not far from the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. There was a lot of bad blood between the Cowboys, the name of the gang comprised of the McLaurys and Clantons, and the Earp family. In an attempt to keep the gangs from unleashing indiscriminate violence on the townfolk, guns and other weapons were flat out banned in the town. Accounts of the events read more along the lines of abuse of police power rather than a paladin in a cowboy hat delivering justice. Everyone involved had their reasons, but those reasons didn't make for good excuses. Wyatt would use the no weapons ordinance to go after people he had a dislike of. Those people just happened to be of criminal inclination in general. At the same time, the ordinance did nothing to prevent the Cowboys gang from arming themselves and committing cold-blooded murder. As I like to say regarding similar modern events, nothing good went into it. Nothing good came out of it. Similarly, in Deadwood, South Dakota, the line between the lower, rougher part of town and the less rough section was ignored by those willing to do harm. The problems of armed men of evil heart committing murder and lesser crimes weren't solved by the banning of guns and other weapons by name or category. The problems were solved by creating opportunities to both improve one's economic status by choice of work, as well as the opportunity to redress grievances without the need to resort to violence. With an improved economic situation both personally and in the area, folks weren't limited in relaxation to intoxication and interaction that easily led to arguments. The biggest core of gang behavior appears to me to be a social rut or ditch that once a person slides into it, the only way they can get out of it is feet first. Between lack of visible opportunities and social pressure to not take some possibilities, too many people resort to theft and drugs as a way of life. And, as Weer'd likes to mention, if there's a dispute in a drug deal, the two parties can't go before a judge in small claims court to settle things out. What's more, court costs can be ruinously expensive to the point everyone loses but the lawyers and the state. Rather than nothing to lose, people in that situation have everything to lose. That leaves the spree killers. Rare, but when there's a large enough population with 24/7 news, everyone hears about them. Most often, it is a failure of the bureaucratic system to take note of dozens of police interactions, including arrests, reports, and so forth. It takes time and effort to put together a case precisely because it is too easy to abuse police powers otherwise. It would, perhaps, be a good thing if situations improved, as I noted earlier, so that the various police agencies can focus their attention on positive prevention. That is to say, positive interaction with people, and being able to follow up on people such as the Parkland and Uvalde killers. I wish I had some simple, easy answers that fit on a bumper sticker. The best I can do is toss out some thoughts and observations, hoping that others can find the pieces of a solution to fit together. Have fun, be safe, I hope I gave you something to think about. Oh, and Weer'd, I've got a couple links that you really ought to put in the show notes. Just if you're not too busy petting ducks or whatever it is, something censored.
He's got some great show notes. I decided also to add one that notes that that a lot of these towns that had no firearms ordinances, it was very, very well documented that it was for outsiders. It was for cowboys coming into town, gamblers coming into town, and that they wanted those people unarmed. But the shopkeepers and the locals and the people that lived in those towns not only could carry arms, but were armed.
And as has been demonstrated time and time again, people who are going to commit assault, robbery, murder aren't going to be deterred by a law that says you can't bring your gun into town.
That piece of paper is not going to protect you. Now, on to some more good news. Hilariously, Oddball has been saying, I'll get you a segment, and just has been absolutely stuck with writer's block. And then, like, literally in like the last hour, he just wrote, recorded, and submitted this segment because Oddball loves knives, and we've got a knife right story out of Hawaii.
Welcome to Oddball's Corner Pocket. Listeners of the podcast, and especially the Patreon supporters that listen to the mag dumps, may have picked up some subtle clues that I've been a little despondent over the current state of the legislation of arms and how court cases dealing with such have been proceeding after NYSERPA versus Bruin. After all, that case was a major win for those of us on the Pro 2A side, and by all rights it should have instantly ushered in a new age of freedom. Well, I do actually have a couple pieces of good news in that area. Specifically for knife laws that are directly tied to that. So let's talk about it. If somehow you were unaware of the NYSERPA versus Bruin case, it involved the New York May issue firearms carry permit system. As part of obtaining a permit to carry, you had to provide proper cause that would explain why you, as a common citizen, should be allowed to exercise your right to bear arms in public. The short of it is that the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, who, in a 6-3 decision, determined that that requirement was unconstitutional. Not only did they decide that, but, in the decision, they stated that all laws regulating arms should only be considered constitutional if that law is supported by either the plain text of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed, or by analogous laws that were in place around the time or before the Second Amendment was enacted in 1791, or when the 14th Amendment was ratified and impressed the rights listed in the U.S. Constitution onto the states in 1868. One crucial thing that was stated was that it was no longer proper to simply balance the interests of the state, which has been a key legal thing behind many firearms laws. This has caused all sorts of havoc, both in legislative bodies and courts. There's been a huge number of lawsuits against anti-gun laws filed since the decision was dropped. Meanwhile, many state legislatures, including New York, have decided to pass laws ranging from extremely restrictive carry permit systems to assault weapons bans that may or may not ban almost all semi-auto firearms. I'm confident that most, if not all of these laws, will be struck down, but it's going to take years, if not decades. In the meantime, folks that wish to exercise their rights as documented in the Constitution are suffering. So, I said there was good news, right? Once again, the fine folks at Knife Rights have been hard at work. Apparently, it has been illegal to carry any knife in the city limits of Philadelphia since 1968. Knife Rights filed a lawsuit citing NYSERPA versus Bruin, and the city of Philadelphia officially recognized that they would absolutely lose that case if it was actually tried, and instead of fighting it, simply admitted defeat. The judge did state in his decision that the state of Pennsylvania could enact legislation that could reinstate it, which I really don't like, but I'm going to take the win for what it is. The other good news, oddly enough, comes out of the Ninth Circuit and Hawaii. Hawaii has had a ban on butterfly knives, also known as balisongs, since the 90s. Two gentlemen by the names of Andrew Teter and James Grell filed a lawsuit complaining that they were forced to have their knives destroyed when the law was enacted and would like to obtain replacements, but can't due to the law. In the case, Teter versus Lopez, the district court determined that the state's ban was kosher and that the gentlemen had no standing due to the fact that they hadn't actually been charged with possession of such knives. Armed with the NYSERPA versus Bruin decision, Teter and Grell filed an appeal. The 3-judge panel from the Ninth Appellate Circuit published their decision on August 7th, which happens to be the day that I am currently recording this. The 3 judges unanimously decided that the district court got it wrong on both counts. Beyond that, I believe that the state tried to argue that a butterfly knife was not a protected arm. Unfortunately for them, their own expert witnesses admitted that butterfly knives have been used both offensively and defensively, and of course, the court noted that bladed weapons, like knives, were very much considered arms at the time of our founding fathers. To try to argue otherwise was just foolish. They fairly quickly dismissed the idea that the plaintiffs had no standing simply because they hadn't been charged with the crime of possession of these knives. Merely swearing that they wanted to buy them but couldn't legally was sufficient damage to allow the lawsuit. Finally, there's the question of whether or not there were analogous laws. The state tried, and they did bring up several knife laws. Unfortunately for them, the court decided that the laws that they brought up that were from the relevant time frame primarily covered the manner of carry, not the outright ban of ownership or sale. The court also pointed out that the laws that the state argued were analogous dealt with large daggers, Bowie knives, Arkansas toothpicks, and other similarly large blades, while the standard butterfly knife more resembles a standard pocket knife, both in size and use. The court pretty much rejected out of hand the state's argument that balisongs are primarily owned by criminals for criminal activity. And the state also tried to argue that the fact that a butterfly knife can be opened one-handed somehow makes them unusual and dangerous. The court basically had no desire to entertain this line of thought. One thing I will note of interest from a procedural side is that the court also rejected the state's requested extra time to do their homework to find more historical support for the ban in light of NYSERPA versus Bruin. Their reasoning had something to do with the difference between legislative facts and adjudicative facts, which, unfortunately, I think that difference is one of those things that you really have to be a lawyer to properly understand. And, well, I may be the son of a lawyer and have stayed in a Holiday Inn on occasion, but I'm not actually a lawyer. The reason I find this interesting is that seems to be the favorite trick of various states to draw out their case. As I see it, right now, the states that are defending anti-arms laws have only two ways of ultimately winning. Either a couple's Supreme Court justices are replaced by anti-gun judges, which isn't out of the question with the current administration, or the plaintiffs run out of money or die. This request is often approved by judges in these cases, and for valid reason. If the case started before NYSERPA versus Bruin, the legal landscape has changed, and it's fair to give the parties time to adjust for that. The fact that the request was denied, and by a panel in the 9th, may be a sign that appellate judges are not going to let the state continue to do that, since, well, they should have already done that homework by now. Not only for the case that they're currently working on, but similar cases that I'm sure that their state is having to deal with on that subject matter. I hope you found this interesting. More of my thoughts can be found at gunscarstech.com. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts for future segments, I can be reached at Oddball at gunscarstech.com or on the ACP Facebook page. Oh, and for this one in particular, I'll make sure that Weer'd puts up links to the relevant Four Boxes Diner video, the Teter versus Lopez decision, and kniferights.org. If you've got some spare cash laying around, the folks at Knife Rights have been kicking butt and taking names with a relatively small budget and could always use your support. Until next time, have a good one.
This is such good news, and I am exceptionally pleased with the fact that a lot of the bad knives, such as the balisongs and things like that, has been shot down, because the idea that there's good knives versus bad knives is like really, really dumb. I mean, a lot of jurisdictions, especially like Europe, if you're allowed to carry a knife at all, it needs to be a small blade that is non-locking. Well, the locking part's a safety feature. I want my knife to lock. As a matter of fact, the knife that I was carrying today not only has a liner lock on it, but it also had the little safety lock that actually locks the liner in place while you're using it, so that under no circumstance can it be bumped loose and close on you. So that's a good thing. And then the size of the blade, well, I mean, there's all sorts of good, it doesn't make any sense. Like, how come I can't carry a 4-inch pocket knife, but I can have a 14-inch chef knife?
So I haven't looked it up. I was mildly curious as to how Hawaii felt about fixed blade knives. Probably bans them too, because they seem to want to ban everything. But the reason I'm thinking that is because when Oddball mentioned that balisongs were considered evil because you could open them with one hand, and I just thought, just like every single fixed knife out there. I mean, just because something is one-handed does not make it evil.
Oh yeah, no, I am the vast majority of my knife collection. I have a huge thing for folding knives, which are absolutely a compromise compared to a fixed blade knife. Every single one of my fixed blade knives performs far better than my folding knives. But I like fixed blade knives for the same reason why I like handguns. While they are a pile of compromises, they are far more practical in the fact that they are very easy to carry along with you. And the knife that's at home does you no good when there's a package that needs to be opened somewhere else.
You got teeth, don't you?
I do have teeth, but especially those like crappy little heat riveted blister packs.
Oh God, those. I hate those.
Yeah, those absolutely suck, and it is very, very difficult cutting one of those open without shedding some of your own blood, because they always like break in very, very sharp ways. But I will say that a pocket knife is a really, really good way to get it if you don't have a pair of really, really heavy shears that you can just cut along the bead.
I know that I've mentioned this on this podcast before, but there is a tool that I swear by, and it's called the Plastic Surgeon. And it is a tool that is very specifically for opening those hard plastic blister packs. And you can get it for like $15 in free shipping on Amazon. I'm going to have a link to it in the show notes.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, no, it's...
And, yeah, I have that. Okay, I think every house has a mug that's got like a highlighter and some Sharpies and some pens. And so I've got it in that alongside a utility knife. One of the, the kinds that you click out, and I can snap off the tip when it gets dull. And I use that for opening like tape on packages. And then I got the Plastic Surgeon for the, a wise guy, eh? And, you hold back the plastic shield, and you just stab at the thing, and then you just cut. It's fantastic. Some of the best money I've ever spent. I know that it doesn't have great ratings on Amazon, but I swear by it. So, if you get it, I hope you love it.
And one must note, we are both avid gamers, and so anybody, especially doing a fantasy role-playing game, will know that if there's a certain type of enemy in an area that is very, very prevalent, it's good to carry around the weapon that gives the bonuses against them. Like, oh, this is an ogre den. Well, thankfully, I have my ogre slaying axe. Oh, well, there's a dragon up in that mountain. Well, good thing I've got my dragon slayer. Aaron,
are there ogres around? Because this is +9 against ogres.
I was going to say the ogre slaying knife, but I thought that was a little too on the nose for the D&D sketch. If there's any girls there, I want to do them.
Let it do them.
Those of you who get it. Maybe we should throw a link to that in the show notes as well. Why not? Oddball will appreciate it in his segment. But
sure.
But yeah, having the plastic packaging slaying knife is absolutely a wise move in these dark times, Aaron Paulette.
What's the difference between direct gas impingement and an expending gas piston system? David is here to explain.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In this segment, I'd like to discuss a firearm terminology issue that's something of a pet peeve for me. No, I don't mean magazine versus clip. While that's a significant irritant for many people, I'm not all that concerned with the transposition of those two terms. The one I'm talking about today is a bit more subtle. I mean the common reference to the AR family of rifles as direct gas impingement. While they certainly are gas-operated systems, they don't technically meet the definition of direct gas impingement. More properly, this mechanism should be considered an expanding gas piston system. I have tried to explain this before to people, though with limited success. I even had one fellow on social media insist the M16 was direct impingement because his sergeant in the Army had told him so. Even when I quoted Gene Stoner, the man who designed the rifle, this fellow wouldn't be moved from his position. At that point, I no longer had the time, energy, or crayons to engage further, so I let it go. Of course, explaining all this will require a fairly detailed description of the AR operating system as well as other firearms in comparison. Let me start with Gene Stoner's own words from his patent on the basic mechanism, number 2951424, issued on September 6, 1960, in which he stated the following. It is a principal object of this invention to utilize the basic parts of an automatic rifle mechanism such as the bolt and bolt carrier to perform a double function. This double function consists of the bolt's primary function to lock the breech against the pressure of firing and secondarily to act as a stationary piston to actuate the automatic rifle mechanism. The primary function of the bolt carrier is to lock and unlock the bolt by rotating it and to carry it back and forth in the receiver. The secondary function of the bolt carrier is to act as a movable cylinder to actuate the automatic rifle mechanism. By having the bolt carrier act as a movable cylinder and the bolt act as a stationary piston, the need for a conventional gas cylinder, piston, and actuating rod assembly is eliminated. He then went on to say, this invention is a true expanding gas system instead of the conventional impinging gas system. By utilization of a metered amount of gas from the barrel, the automatic rifle mechanism is less sensitive to different firing pressures caused by variations in the propelling charge. Okay, what does all that mean? More simply put, in a true direct gas impingement system, the force of the expanding gas acts directly on the bolt or bolt carrier if present. This force then directly moves the bolt back, performing any unlocking as part of that single direction linear motion of the parts. With nearly all gas-operated firearms, the bullet passes a gas port in the barrel, and a portion of the expanding gas is redirected back towards the receiver through a gas tube. However, in the AR platform, there isn't a short-stroke gas piston, as in the Gewehr 43 or M1 Carbine, nor a long-stroke gas piston, as in the AK-47 or M1 Garand. Also, unlike the MAS 49 or the earlier Ljungman 42, which are true direct gas impingement systems, where the locking parts are directly pushed to the rear by the action of the expanding gas. With the AR family of firearms, the process is a bit more complicated. The gas that enters the gas tube is directed through a gas key into an expansion chamber inside the carrier located behind the bolt. Gas rings on the bolt, similar to the piston rings in a car engine, help contain this pressure temporarily. Once pressurized, the bolt is pushed forward against the breech face. This helps reduce drag between the locking lugs on the barrel extension and the bolt in a later part of the cycle. Meanwhile, the gas pressure also begins moving the carrier back, sliding it along the tail of the bolt. Within a short distance, the gas rings on the bolt clear the gas relief ports on the side of the carrier, releasing any remaining pressure. From this moment, all further rearward movement in the mechanism is from the inertia already applied to the carrier from that initial burst of gas. At this point, a track in the carrier causes the bolt cam pin to start its rotation, unlocking the bolt from engagement with the locking lugs. Once this is complete, the carrier's continued movement pulls the bolt out of the barrel extension and they continue on their way together, compressing the recoil spring. From here, the rest of the process is nearly identical to all other autoloading firearms. The empty case is extracted and ejected, the fire control mechanism is reset for the next shot, and as the bolt returns forward, a new cartridge is pushed out of the magazine, chambered, and the mechanism locked. While there are a number of other details involved in this mechanism, I think you get the idea as far as gas impingement versus direct gas impingement. Is the difference between gas impingement and direct gas impingement apparent or important to most shooters? Of course not. Do I expect people to stop calling the AR family direct impingement? Of course I don't. But a better understanding of these mechanisms and proper use of terminology is rarely a bad thing. As long as no one is aggressive or a jerk about it, of course. Have fun and safe shooting.
The XM16E1 is a 5.56 millimeter shoulder weapon. It is magazine-fed, gas-operated, and air-cooled.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
You know what I have to say about that, Aaron Paulette?
No, Weird Beard. What do you have to say about that?
I will piss David off by saying that the AR is direct impingement, but so is the M1 Garand and the AK-47, because both of them, the gas is pushing directly on the bolt carrier. Just the difference is that the bolt carrier goes all the way over to that end, and the AR, the gas just goes all the way back.
And then I'm over here not caring.
I know. Aaron doesn't care about the minutia. Does it work? Cool.
I mean, look, if you're into this, and I know a lot of you are, that's fine. God bless you. I'm not mocking you. But, you know, some of y'all are car guys, and you change your own oil, and you know the timing sequence of spark plugs. And then there's me, who it's like, you know, the opportunity cost is too high. I'm just gonna take it to the service station and have them do it for me because they're professionals and they'll do it right. And I don't have to get down on the ground and get covered in oil. And that's kind of how I feel about this issue. It's like, the AR-15 works. Okay, cool. Next.
And certainly I've done the same thing. When I got my first new vehicle, I was like, oh, this is mine, and it's only been mine, and oh, this is my vehicle. You know what? This should be. And it was a Ford Ranger, so it was a 4x4, so it was fairly high off the ground, so it was super easy to slide underneath this thing. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go change my oil. And my next door neighbor did all of the work on his truck all the time. So I went over to him and I borrowed his oil filter wrench and he had a catch basin, and he was even nice enough to say, yeah, don't worry about it. There's a couple of more oil changes worth in that catch basin. So just pour yours into the catch basin and seal it up, and I'll take care of it when it's full. So
nice.
I mean, such a great guy, and it's one of those that's one of the things about my parents moving that I'm going to miss is talking with him. I mean, he's really became a great family friend. And that this will go further in this is all right. So I got underneath the truck. I managed after some difficulty to get the strap wrench around the oil filter and get the thing turned off. Got it loose, burned my hand on the exhaust manifold, which was right by where the filter was.
It was still hot?
Yeah, because I had to drive it down to the auto parts store to get the things that I needed.
Okay.
I mean, I had left it for a little while. I thought it had been cooled off enough, but I wasn't going to wait until the next morning. I had places to go and things to do.
Go on.
Got oil all down the front of me, and not on the driveway though, so that was good, or at least minimal. I probably whatever I got on the driveway, I probably soaked up crawling around underneath my truck, and then when I went to go put the oil filter on, I was unaware, but I just flipped through the book at the Napa Auto Parts that had all the different oil filter sizes on it. And I popped up to a 4-liter Ford V6 and went, aha, that's what I've got. and I was unaware. That was the first time I'd ever seen a 4-liter V6 in a Ranger. All my friends all had the 3-liter one, which Aaron does not care about. But the punchline is that, oh no, Ford had made some modifications to this 4-liter V6 so that it took a different oil filter. And so I went
see, I thought you were leading up to the fact that, oh no, mine was actually a 3-liter.
No, I big good.
It's still a 4-liter, but just a 4-liter.
Yes, I had picked out the oil filter for a 1998 Ford Ranger 4-liter V6. And in fact, it was this was the oil filter this was a 2001 Ranger oil filter, which was different. So I actually went up to my neighbor's house again and said, "Oh my God, I clearly picked out the wrong oil filter. It won't fit." He goes, threw me the keys to his truck. He says, "Go take it back and exchange it." So he let me borrow his truck too to go back into town and get a different oil filter. And actually, the guy behind the counter was like, "Are they different?" He actually opened up the box and held them up to each other. He goes, "Damn, they are different." So I didn't feel too dumb on that, but got it back together. Got the got everything back together. Got the oil back into the vehicle. I don't think there was any further mishaps after that, but I said, you know what? That sucked. I don't want to do it again. And since then, I've gone to various oil changes places and had it done. And actually, I just had the oil changed on my car, and my mechanic was very, very nice again. Said, "Yeah, something's up with it was the front differential," and he said, "Yeah, it looks like it's leaking. I can't see where it's leaking from," but he said, I don't know this that well, but there's a transmission place up the street, and I guarantee they'll know." And they did. And the guy let me know that differential's going bad, and if I had just changed the oil and seen a little bit of oil spot somewhere and not realized what I was looking at, when I'm going up to Vermont next week, my differential might grenade on me. So mechanics are your friend.
You know, I have to admit, I really wasn't listening to the last part because my mind was mentally replaying that one scene from My Cousin Vinny. However, in 1964, the correct ignition timing would be 4 degrees before top dead center.
Such a good scene. Oh, such a good movie. Oh, really good movie. So that's all good. And we'll know that you won't re-listen to the podcast to hear the rest of that story. But yeah, one interesting thing I do have to say though about the particulars about the AR's direct impingement is I definitely started off early on as like the goof. I was a caliber warrior. I had a lot of wrong opinions, Aaron, believe it or not. And
it's cute that you say that in past tense.
She's not wrong, people. But they're ever evolving wrong opinions, Aaron.
That's fair. I will grant you that.
It's like the statement of why do you wash your car if it's just going to get dirty again? Well, it's going to be new dirt instead of old dirt, and the old dirt will actually, start sinking into the paint. And I won't care because I don't wash my car ever. But I'll clean my guns after shooting 20 rounds through it, but I won't wash my car. Don't ask me why. It doesn't make sense. But I always assumed that the AR's system, because it's blowing some dirt back into the combustion chamber and it's a dirtier action and all that, it was vastly inferior to the either short stroke or long stroke gas piston systems, et cetera, et cetera. And now that literally every country that doesn't have them running some sort of AK variant is running a some sort of M16 M4 variant. Clearly, it works quite well. And if you have an AR and you realize that it is like the most boring gun in your collection because it just works, yeah, there's something to be said about the action. But I'm surprised that more guns don't use that AR style action. There's every time a new AR killer comes out, it's either a short stroke or a long stroke gas piston. Nobody else is is using that. The only other gun that I know that's not an AR-15 that has like the gas tube is the Serbu. What is it? The BFG. Mark Serbu made a semi-auto.
Why are you asking me? I won't know.
Yeah, Mark Serbu made a semi-auto 50 BMG rifle that actually he submitted to the same trials where the military adopted the Barrett, and that one also uses an AR-style gas tube.
BFG 50A.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Because I can type into Google.
Well, there.
You don't want to know what I typed? I typed Serbu BMG rifle. And literally the first entry is from Serbu Firearms, BFG-50A.
Look at that. So moving into more gun geekery, and this one I think might be more up Aaron's alley, Miles is going to give us another Southpaw corner talking about shotguns, and specifically those that are left-handed friendly.
But I'm not left-handed.
No, but you love shotguns.
Hi, this is Miles again with Southpaw Corner, Episode 2, Take 10. In this episode, I'll be going over shotguns. The first thing I will say when it comes to shotguns, due to the lack of ambidextrous choices, this is the one time where I do say that considering a left-handed dedicated one is not a bad idea, but there are some good choices still without going that route. So you don't have to spend the time and money to wait for a special order left-hand shotgun. We will start off with pump-action shotguns, and the first brand we'll be talking about are the Mossbergs. Mossbergs, all of them except for the Maverick 88 versions, have what they call a tang safety, or a safety that's mounted on the back of the receiver. So you can push it forward to turn it off or pull it back to turn it on, which is the one feature that makes it ambidextrous. Everything else is the same for most shotguns. There are 3 different lines of the Mossbergs. There's the Mossberg 500s, the 590s, and the 590A1s. Usually the basic Mossberg 500 will do most people a great job, but you can get different ones in the other lines as well that are still very good shotguns. They're just a little bit more featured. The great thing about the Mossberg 500 line of shotguns is the fact that you can have one shotgun that can do just about anything with just a barrel swap. Because you can get a 18.5-inch home defense barrel, let's say a 20-inch rifled barrel with an integrated scope mount for hunting, or a longer barrel with chokes for trap, skeet, waterfowl, and stuff along those lines. The second pump-action shotgun available is the Browning BPS. It's another pump shotgun with the tang-mounted safety. They seem to have taken the cue from Mossberg, which is great. The big difference with that one is it is a bottom eject, so it doesn't send the shell flying across your field of view for us left-handed shooters. It's not a great deal as far as I'm concerned, the shell's ejecting. You hardly even notice it for me, but some people do not like it. When it comes to semi-auto shotguns, you have 2 style. You have the Mossberg 930, 940, which are very good auto-loading shotguns with kind of all the same features of the 500s, but in an auto-loading version, including this tang safety and the ability to change out barrels for different purposes. The other style are the AR-15 style outloaders shotguns. One that comes into mind is the Rock Island Armory VR-80. It does come with an ambidextrous safety, and a 5-round box magazine is standard. You can also get a 9 and a 19 round, and there's even some companies out there that make drum magazines for them. The big drawback to any of the autoloaders, but especially the VR-80, is you have to be careful about what type of rounds you're using in order for the semi-automatic feature to cycle the round, cycle the action. The recommended is for the low-powered gas piston is rounds with a feet per second of 1350 or higher. And then they have one for even more powerful rounds to help cut back on some of the felt recoil. The other issue with these that I have heard, do not have any experience with my own VR80, is some people have had issues where as the wads pass the gas port in the barrel, little tiny pieces of plastic get shaved off the wad and eventually cause the piston to not work properly. And you'd have to take it apart and clean it out. Those are the basic choices that you have for when it comes to shotguns in the ambidextrous style that work great for left-handed people. Like I said, there are dedicated left-handed shotguns made by many manufacturers, Benelli, Beretta, Winchester, and so forth. But you can easily get away with a standard off-the-shelf one as long as you look for the right brands with the right features. Thank you for listening again, and have a great week. Bye.
So first up, I got to say, Miles mentions the rifled shotgun barrel with the attached scope mount, and it just immediately popped something into my mind that I love to giggle about. Is we talk a lot about the Elmer Fuds being like on the side of gun control, and they're the enemy of us, and I mean, certainly the definition of an Elmer Fudd is somebody who is a gun owner, but and is more than happy to sell us up the river so long as they keep doing their side of the hobby that they like. But
I call them gun butters.
What was that?
I call them gun butters.
Yeah. No, I've definitely heard that one. That's a good one. But I got to say, old Elmer Fudd also knows how to exploit some loopholes. Just like how after the '94 ban, we were grinding off the bayonet lugs and pinning muzzle brakes in place and pinning adjustable stocks in place. So look, it's an illegal gun now. We can sell these. I don't know how prevalent this is. I'm not a hunter. I haven't really done that much with it, but I do know that vast swaths of Massachusetts are shotgun only for hunting, and which means that I think the idea being that like they're fairly heavily populated, so you don't want a rifle round that's going to go a long distance. You want a shotgun round that's going to dissipate quickly. Well, Elmer goes on and says, well, guess what? I'll drop a rifled barrel on my shotgun with a scope and put a 30 caliber Sabo slug into it. And hey, look, now I've got essentially that Remington 700 that I'm not allowed to hunt with.
I mean, I get it, but why not just hunt with slugs to begin with?
Well, I think the idea being that if you're using a rifled barrel, then you can now switch over from the Foster type slugs to a more aerodynamic bullet-shaped slug, and then you can drop them down into a subcaliber so that you can get a little bit more velocity.
Okay. Because, I mean, it seemed like it's the same thing with extra steps.
Yeah.
But, all right, yeah, if you're concerned about aerodynamics and you want to get extra performance, I can see that, okay.
And let's face it. If you had a slug barrel, even a rifled slug barrel, and you're using just a 12 gauge slug on it, that's a scope of any kind is unless your eyesight's really bad, isn't going to be doing you any favors one way or the other.
Why's that?
Just because a 1 ounce slug's going to be coming out fairly slow, and you're going to have a big old rainbow trajectory, and it's
okay.
And they usually got that big flat front end, so it's also going to be like driving through the air like a semi truck.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's like you say that like it's a bad thing. Because semi-trucks hit like, well, semis.
Oh, okay. Well, this is getting into... I know that you love your shotguns and your shotgun slugs. And so, and I get that. But I think your primary use for shotguns is home defense.
Well, yes, but I understand we are talking about hunting.
Yeah, so you're not trying to clean out a deer on the other side of a cornfield.
I mean, I'm not, but some people might.
Some people might, and so in that case, you don't want the slug that's cutting through the air like a semi truck. You want a nice Spitzer bullet that's going to slide through like a hot knife through butter. But yes, if you were shooting a masked intruder that just kicked down your door, you want that big flat point slug that's just going to mash into like the size of a dinner plate against them.
I keep hitting my microphone arm.
It's all good. I'll fix it. It'll blow a hole the size of a bushel basket out of the back of them. Aaron, what is your favorite type of shotgun? Could be one you have, could be one that you covet.
Well, okay. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself an aficionado by any means, but I've shot the Keltec KSG, and I really want one.
Well, there you go. Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, they are. And it's not just because it's bullpup, although there is that, but I like the fact that you've got the dual tubes. So not only does it double your ammo, but, if you wanted to switch between slug and shot, or buckshot and birdshot, you've got that capability that really appeals to me.
That is cool.
My one regret about it is that it's pump action rather than semi-auto. And I asked Oleg about that, who, he works for Keltec taking pictures of their stuff. And he apparently had the same question and asked George Kellgren about it. And per Oleg, the answer is along the lines of, Keltec doesn't want the ATF to have any reason to go after them. And apparently a semi-auto, a bullpup, like 14 round or whatever shotgun, Keltec thinks would just be a very inviting target.
So in case you didn't know the particulars what that might be, and any of the listeners that may not, all shotguns are NFA items. Well, at least all shotguns above 410 are NFA items because they're all have bore diameters over 50 caliber. The reason why you may have just walked into a local store and bought a shotgun and you don't have a tax stamp for it is because the ATF exempts most shotguns.
Oh, right. This is that whole, they are technically destructive devices, but they are sheltered under the sporting exemption.
Correct.
Exemption. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why like the 950 JDJ is a legal rifle cartridge. It's literally almost an inch wide. And so it's almost twice the legal limit, so to speak. And it gets away with that because it's specifically designed for bench rest shooting. And there's no there's no guns that'll cause any problems to anybody that are chambered in that ridiculous round.
Really, the only way you could reliably hunt with that monster is if you had it on a pintle mount.
Correct.
Just get a Toyota Hilux, make it technical, then it would work. Otherwise, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Or there was a particular apple orchard where a particular large buck was going through very, very frequently, and you only wanted a cape mount because it'd probably hollow out its rib cage.
So what I think you were saying is that while shotguns have the sporting exemption, if you doubled the ammo capacity and made it much shorter by bullpupping and made it semi-auto, then the ATF would probably declare this isn't sporting.
It might fall into that nasty little zone that is occupied by the Pancor jackhammer. Or not the Pancor jack, the Pecker jackhammer. Essentially doesn't exist, but if it did, it would be a destructive device. I'm thinking about the Striker 12, the street sweeper, and the is it the Daewoo AA-12? I'm trying to remember who makes the AA-12, but that semi-auto shotgun, the semi-auto version of that full auto shotgun is also non-sporting.
Atchison.
Okay. Yes, but either way, there are a couple of shotguns that have been declared destructive devices. And actually, I've heard there's been rumors for a while, but I think there's so many in the wild that I think the ATF would be worried about the natives getting restless is of making the Saiga 12 patterns, the 12 gauge AKs, destructive devices, getting rid of their sporting exemption. never mind the fact that the big reason why those ones exist is because 3-gunners love them. But yeah.
I just remember that one video by FPS Russia, going on close to 20 years ago at this point, because it was the early to mid-aughts, where he's demonstrating the AA-12, and he's holding it, and it's not braced against his shoulder at all, and he's holding it, he's firing full auto, and he's maintaining control over it with just, wrist and forearm muscles, and I'm like, dang!
Yeah, that's a really cool shotgun. Though I've got to say, I'm not that much of a shotgun guy, but I bought a Mossberg 590 simply because it is the only shotgun that comes directly from the factory with a bayonet mount, and I saw the what was it, the Winchester 1897 trench gun, and I went, oh my god, with like the 17-inch sword bayonet, and I went, oh my god. I want one of those so bad. It's a shotgun with a sword on the end of it. And
have you shot one of those slamfire?
No, I actually never have.
I have the very first bidet shoot. Awella one brought one. Now, he doesn't have a real one. It's a replica made, I think, by the Chinese. Mm-hmm. But he did have the sword bayonet, and I insisted that it be mounted for the full trench sweeper experience, and I slam fired that sucker, and it was fun. It was hard as hell for me to control, but it was fun, and if I'm shooting down a trench, I don't need a lot of control.
Well, I remember seeing Matt Carricker bought one of the Ithacas, and that didn't have the disconnector on it, and he was mentioning the fact that it could slam fire, and literally on camera filled up the mag and then dumped it down range from the standard pulling the trigger for each shot, and to see how fast he could go, and then dumped it slam firing, and then the look of shock on his face of the, oh my god, I didn't think it was going to be that much faster, because it was a lot faster. And probably far less controllable, because again, you're hucking a lot of 12 gauge. But I've got to say, I bought this Mossberg just because it's a Mossberg. I know they're good shotguns, and I want to stick a knife on the end of my shotgun. And but the more I've had this, I love the Mossberg thing. I love where the slide release is. Unless you want to put like a folding stock and a pistol grip on it, the tang safety is awesome. And again, ambi, as Miles mentions, but also with the Mossbergs, when the action is closed, the ejection port is wide open. You don't have that little elevator that wants to pinch your fingers, which means that loading them up is, number one, very pleasant, but two, if you need to do it fast, they load up really fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one that I have at home, it's technically a Mossberg 500. I say technically because it was one of those store brands from the 70s, either like Sears or JCPenney's. But I looked it up, and it literally is a Mossberg 500, just licensed to one of those stores and made under a different name. I think it's called like a Revelation or something.
Oh, interesting.
I wrote about it years and years ago. Let me look it up here.
Yeah, put it in the show notes.
I shall do so.
Yeah, I have a Glenfield Model 60 as a 22, and it's simply a Marlin Model 60 that was made for Sears and Roebuck. And actually, my last trip to the range, my daughter was with me, and I loaded that one up for her, and had to do the slow down, even though I knew that she was putting all of them into the black, because that gun, I remember we were actually at a blog shoot, and a friend of mine, I think it was the first time she'd ever shot guns, but she was there, and of course, at this blog shoot, there's a whole ton of like NFA collectors there, so there's a ton of machine guns around. So she kind of got ruined because she thought that like everyone's got like 3 or 4 machine guns, don't they? And she saw me go up to the line and dump all 19 rounds that this gun holds into a pie plate that was, 15 yards downrange. And she looked at it and goes, "Oh, that thing's full auto too?" I said, "No, it just shoots really fast."
Okay, I was thinking of something else, because I've got 2 firearms that are store brand, and I'm guessing the revelation was, well, it must have been something else, because I'm looking at my shotgun right now, and it says New Haven.
Okay.
And then underneath it says by Mossberg. So, I looked that up, and that is, and I know it's Mossberg 500 because I bought 500 parts for it, and it works just fine.
And Montgomery Ward, according to Wikipedia.
Oh, there we go. I was just about to look that up. Yeah, back when Montgomery Ward existed. Yep, New Haven 600 is identical to the Mossberg 500. Yep, that's exactly it.
And I also had to look this up because my gun geekery was going through. I knew that Mossberg was based out of Connecticut, and in fact, they have a facility in New Haven, Connecticut. So, way to be imaginative, Mossberg.
Well, I mean, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that they're showing some hometown pride.
I mean, that is true. I will try not to throw any shade at New Haven. It's a beautiful looking city, but I also knew a New Haven cop, and he's just like, yeah, don't go there after dark.
I assume because of crime.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the parts of New England that ban firearms are very dangerous places, and New Haven is one of them. Well, there, I think we managed to make it through this show, Aaron.
Mm-hmm, we did.
So now is the time where I thank our listeners. That's right. I'm right here in your ear hole saying thank you. Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate every one of you guys. We're not doing this for our health. We're doing this to make people happy, which is our health. Let's be honest. It makes us feel better. And so, yeah. And so thank you so much. But also thank you to our lovely supporters on Patreon. And for those that don't know, we've got a Patreon group. You go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast, and you can sign up. And if you sign up, you can get an early release of the podcast. Plus, we have bonus content, which that's the juice. We got the blooper reels, we've got ACP film tracks, and we've got the ACP mag dump.
Now, Weer'd, can you say get square with the house?
Yes, and if you're listening to an ACP bonus feature, because someone shared it with you. I keep saying it. It's just like you're going to share this show with a friend, and you're going to lose. Also, if you're an ACP Patreon member, by all means, share the stuff you've got with friends. And yeah, if you're a friend and you're listening to that, you go there to get square with the house.
You didn't flub it this time. Good for you.
Yeah, you heard that clip, didn't you?
You posted it in Discord. Of course I did.
For those that are subscribers, the ACP blooper reel that I think just dropped, according to you, it's a long one, but right at the beginning, you'll be greeted by the fact that even though I've been doing these blooper reel intros for years, I still screw them up.
So yeah, the blooper reel intro was itself a blooper. How very meta of you.
I was trying not to.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
And you get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And I'm also on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.e/Aaron Paulette, all one word. I know, I haven't been writing lately because, as you've heard, I got a lot of crap going on in my life. And hopefully when things normalize, I'll be able to start writing again. So that's why I've kind of disappeared.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Tonight I learned I'm a shotgun aficionado, and Weer'd, as we all know, is very fond of the FNFAL, or as I like to call it, the Effin' Foul. Our long arm preferences are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.